Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage StriveTogether Board Chair, Nancy Zimfer.
Good morning, everybody. That was the first thing I was going to say. I'm Nancy Zimfer, Chairman of the StriveTogether Board of Directors, and thrilled to be so. I want to welcome you. I want to call that clarion charge, Be the Change, Results for Kids. This is what we're all about. I'd have to say I was an English major and an English teacher. I think be the change is a declarative sentence, and the you is understood. So you got it? This is our charge, and this is the 8th annual StriveTogether convening. We are thrilled to be here in Phoenix today. I simply want to say to you, last night was a great launch to our work. I want to thank Jennifer Blatz. This is one of many thank yous we will offer to our interim CEO of StriveTogether. So one more round of thank you for Jennifer. And I want to say about thriving together, when you've got a mayor and a Brian telling that story the way they did last night, you got to be proud. This is a great local partnership, and the mariachi band was just icing on the cake. So, Phoenix, where are you? Stand up and let us officially thank you for your hospitality in this great city. So, we couldn't do this conference without sponsorship. And I want you to take a good look at what you see on the screen. Now, there's an interesting phenomenon. I'm on the stage. I'm reading this slide right here. But guess what? It's not here. You know, this is called a confidence monitor. You gain confidence because you can see that slide right here. Not happening. So this morning could go any way, who knows? So if you would just kindly thank our sponsors as you are reading them on the screen. Now, see, correction in progress. I go back quite a way with StriveTogether. I go all the way back to this thing we talk about called our launch on the Purple People Bridge. This is the pedestrian bridge in Cincinnati, Ohio, and northern Kentucky that connects us when we say it's just a river. It's just a river. Where have you heard that? It's just a county line. Who cares? We're working together. So at that time, we were launching the Strive Partnership, which ultimately became StriveTogether, and I and Jennifer and Jeff were all on that bridge. But I use that slide today because I point out, even in remarks I've given in the past when I was chancellor of the State University of New York, look at that slide. There's a mayor there. There's a superintendent there. There are several university presidents there. There's the United Way there. And you know what? We could replace those faces with the faces of your local partnership. That symbolic Purple People Bridge was really powerful. And all along the way, we had the founding executive director, first of the Strive Partnership, and then of StriveTogether, and you know that person as Jeff Edmondson. Now, Jeff has a new title. Hold your applause. This is going to be resounding, Jeff, but not yet. You know now that Jeff is the managing director of the Ballmer Group, and of course, we're going to hear from Steve in behalf of Steve and Connie Ballmer shortly. I'm the warm-up band, Steve, so I'm getting there. But I knew that in spite of the fact that the StriveTogether team said goodbye to Jeff in 1,000 different ways, lots of gifts, lots of crying, lots of hugging, the executive directors from across the country put a video together to give to Jeff. This all happened months ago, but this is the first time for all of us collectively to thank Jeff Edmondson. Jeff, on your feet, and everybody else, a round of thanks. Wow. You see, no flowers, no plaque, just our heartfelt thank you for your leadership and the future that you are going to bring to this work. So I wanted to say one more word about being the chairman of the board. You know, we've only been our own independent 501c3 for 6 months. So we are a small board intending to grow. But there's one person on this board that I want you to thank, because she is her own executive director of Milwaukee Succeeds, and she is just jack of all trades, and I want to thank you, Danae Davis. Stand up and let us thank you. Yay! Okay. I've only got a few surprises left, so I got to move on. As I said, warm-up band for Steve Ballmer, and that is saying a lot, I want to tell you. This is Strive Together by the numbers. You know that we were 100-plus local partnerships. We dropped back to about 49 partnerships. We have stabilized at 70 partnerships. At least that is the number today. And I love this map because when you look at the map, you can see that about a half a dozen states have 4 or more local partnerships in the Strive Together family, which really sets the table for one of the end game goals, which is public policy that supports our work. So the map is good for every dot that's there, but it's especially interesting for those states from California to New York that have more than 1, more than 2, more than 3 partnerships. And 37, that's like half, if you kind of think about it, of these local partnerships are in the sustaining gateway. That means they are on their way to systems change. 32 states, this is really a remarkable network in a very short amount of time. Now, you know, we have a definition of proof point, that 60% of the indicators on the outcomes we are attempting to achieve are trending positive. I tell you, I love that trending positive phrase. It's not good or bad, it's moving forward. And we know that our first proof point, not only 60% of the indicators trending positive, but also in systems change, is the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky Strive Partnership. So will the Strive Partnership stand up? We just want to thank you for being our first proof point. Where are you? Of course, now that I can see the confidence monitor, the other part of it is I can't see you. So did they stand up? Did they, okay, good. Now, we want more proof points. And the big news today is that we have our second proof point. It's called Commit in Dallas, Texas. So stand up. Woo! All right. Woo! And it's for good reason. When I was talking to Todd Williams last night, he said to me, our work is thematic. So, and I love this because I'm a branding guru, they name things, and those names stick. So Early Matters is their name for their commitment to early childhood, and Best of Class is their name for lifting up the teaching profession, for recruiting more teachers into a time of great shortage, and especially affecting underserved populations. That's what Commit is doing. They are using data for continuous improvement, and they are driving policy across the state of Texas. And I'm telling you, their goals are incredibly ambitious. And they've got a lot of facts here. I'm not good with facts on a daily basis, but I want to tell you, if you look across the indicators that Commit is measuring, you see growth in almost all of those indicators. And that's what we're driving. Not necessarily always thinking about the composite, but within that composite lives a child in a family, in a community, for whom we are making a difference. And that is Commit Dallas. So our goal is 10 partnerships. Actually, we've met this goal. We have 10 partnerships in systems change. And for those of you, this is totally, I'll say, Steve, inside baseball, but I know we meant inside basketball. This is what we do to assess readiness as you move from one gateway to another. And you have to say, we think we're ready for that assessment. 10 of our local partnerships have said that. We now have 2 proof points. We're going for 5 proof points by 2018. And I want to lift up just people who are on their way. Because you don't arrive at proof point like one day you aren't and the next day you are. What you do is you get small victories along the way. And this is no small victory. In fact, Learn to Earn, Dayton, Ohio, and Strive Partnership, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, have actually had dedicated ballot box success in getting $20 million in each community to support early childhood education. Will you guys get on your feet one more time so we can thank you for a big policy drive? Now, it's interesting that a couple other of our local partnerships are really driving the math agenda, getting more success in math and driving down remediation. So that's the Youth Initiative in Adams County, and that's Denver, by the way, and the Summit Education Initiative, and that's Akron, Ohio. Will you stand so that we can thank you for driving the math agenda? Thank you. And Bexar County, also in Texas, San Antonio, is really working on increased graduation rates. I know that you are all doing that, but Bexar, stand up so we can thank you as well. So in composite here, these little dots suggest the percentage of local partnerships who are driving the positive trends from kindergarten to college completion. And oh, by the way, you will hear at noon when we do our strategic plan, our 5-year plan presentation, that we are finally going to address career success and add that 7th location on the education pipeline. But this is how we're faring. Yes, thank you. I don't know. Jennifer, that took several years, but we finally have to find a way to measure our success in that regard, and those 7 stops along the pipeline are what we're all about. And I want you to know that the Strive Together staff is hard at work as well. By now, you should know your network navigator. And of course, it should be 100%, but you know what? When we call, you have to call back. So there are a couple of you who haven't returned our call, but this is what Strive Together at the central office is doing. You are sharing your resources. In fact, everything that's being shared today and tomorrow will be in this learning resource place in our website. The portal is where you find each other and work together. Of course, we are training, we are educating, we are doing professional development. We are not doing training. We are doing professional leadership development. A lot of that work comes from our partnership with Annie E. Casey and the leadership development that we are doing through Strive Together. And you are beginning to tell us the most fantastic outcome stories. We have 27 of them. We'd like 2,700 of them. Get busy. You have stories to tell. So our theory of action is alive and well. We are doing continuous improvement. We are doing policy development. And we are driving community impact. And that, my friends, is the best I can do with all this data to tell you, you are really good. You are the change. And that's what this is all about. So it is my incredibly great privilege to make an introduction today of Steve and Connie Ballmer. Now, you know that Steve is former chair of Microsoft. You know that he owns the LA Clippers, and you'd love to talk a lot about those things with him. But what you don't know enough of that you will know is Steve and Connie's commitment to exactly the work, the change that we are trying to realize. They have traveled the country. They actually made a stop in Cincinnati, which I think was life-changing for us and life-changing for them, to hear our theory of action and to hear the successes that we are achieving under the concept of trending positive. So I'll tell you, I think maybe you drew a straw, Connie, and Steve won. I don't know. But I know he's speaking in your behalf as well. Connie has spent the last 15 years understanding foster care, care for children out of the home. And like we backed up on Strive Together from college access all the way to prenatal care, she has a great understanding for how you surround a child in out-of-home care with all the contributing factors that make their lives better. So I know that Steve speaks for Connie. Today he speaks for Strive Together. And without further ado, Steve Ballmer.
Do I grab that from you?
It's a clicker.
The heart is a blue.
Woo! I gotta say, it's a little nervous when the Strive Together folks said, hey, will you speak at our annual convening? And I said, well, look, there's a few problems here. Number one, everybody I'd be speaking to knows absolutely more than I do on any topic on which I'd speak. They said, okay, that's probably true, but come along anyway. Come along anyway. So I'm a little nervous today, I will admit that. But as I was listening to Nancy speak, I finally figured out what this really is today. It's what I would have called a sales meeting when I was at Microsoft. You bring together the people from around the world who are really doing the work and getting out there, and you get all pumped up by the successes that you're having, and you hear about new ideas and new concepts that let you move forward and do even better work. You hear about how the headquarters is there to serve and help drive and support you in everything that you're doing. You celebrate the successes, as Nancy just did, and now I'm much calmer. This is a social services sector sales meeting. And I'm good at sales meetings. If any of you looked my bio up or anything on the internet, there are plenty of crazy videos of me running around at sales meetings being excited. I'm excited here. I used to end the intros and the exits, actually, of most of my sales meeting with 4 words. I love this company. That's how I felt about Microsoft. I was thinking about that today, and I thought I could just make it clear about why I'm here. I love these communities. You guys are doing fantastic work, and I'm pleased to have a chance to be here with you today. I think one of the things I know one of the things we all share, but I'll use my words, is this notion that every kid in America should have an opportunity, a reasonable opportunity at the American dream. Everybody means something different probably by the American dream, and yet we know it inspires us. It has something to do with fairness. It has something to do with opportunity. It has something to do with the ability to dream. You can do whatever you want to do, that you'll be better off economically, or at least have the chance to be better off economically than your folks. That to me is super important. My dad was an immigrant. He came here from Switzerland. My grandparents on the other side were immigrants. They came here from Russia sort of just before World War I. I certainly am a product of opportunity. I'm a first-generation American, although it doesn't feel that way to me. But the notion that this is a place, America's a place of opportunity to which you can visit is important. But it's got to be a place of opportunity for everybody. It shouldn't matter where you're born or the circumstance of your birth or what your race or ethnicity is or what your gender is or how you came to the country. That shouldn't matter. Now that's an idealistic theory, but it's one I believe in. And it's one that's certainly worth working on. My wife and I are active, very active actually. Ask Jeff Edmondson, maybe we're too active in our philanthropic work. We call ourselves the Ballmer Group. And the Ballmer Group is an outgrowth of a journey that we've been on. Nancy talked about how my wife Connie, probably 15 years ago, got very kind of focused and excited about doing better for kids who were in the foster system. And that built, and she sort of got involved in some other things, and there were other not-for-profits doing great work for kids. And I was running Microsoft, running around, worrying, how many Windows computers got sold and what was the future of the internet. And I paid no attention to any of it, not a lick. I have to say I'm a man of focus, and I was not focused. 3 years ago, roughly, 3 years ago, I retired. And I thought, God, retirement, this will be fun. Maybe get involved with sports, play a lot of golf, God, it's going to be, as my kids would say, it's going to be the bomb. And so I was fired up for that. And Connie said, no, now you're getting involved in our philanthropic stuff. And I said, oh. She says, we got to focus on kids. And I said, well, come on. The best way to help the poor, the sick, et cetera, is to pay your taxes. Because the government does do most of that work. That's the way I felt. And she said, what are you talking about? Of course we should pay our taxes, but we can do more than that. There's got to be some way for us to make more of a difference with the blessings we've received. The notion we have time, we have some connections, we certainly have resources, we have a little bit of intelligence. How do you make a difference? And I still was a little skeptical, but I said, okay, I'll throw in with you, but I'm still going to go off and study what the heck government does. And when I come back full circle, I will tell you, Connie was right, and I was right. It took me a few years to prove my case. She proved hers pretty instantaneously. I'll tell you just one funny story. Right after I retired, I was kind of interested in, not running for office, but government and making a difference in this issue, and I went for a trip to D.C., and I sat down with 2 senators at one point from the same state, and I was talking about the issues we cared about and philanthropy and what's important, and I said, we should just pay our taxes. And these are 2 great senators, and they looked at me and said, are you crazy? You'd give your money to the government as opposed to use it yourself to drive good? I was all in. I was all in. Connie and I had come together. Now, I can't say we knew what it meant to do things at scale. Connie had kind of been building up, doing a lot of great work, but we said we really want to take this to the next level. We decided right away we're only focusing in the U.S., and we're only going to focus in on opportunity for kids. That's all we were going to do. We don't focus in on medical research, which is great. We don't focus in on universities, although we do help our alma maters because they're always really good at getting their teeth into you. We're not into the environment. We're not into the arts. We're just into the notion of what do you do to help kids achieve opportunity in the United States. We came through in that process and we got busy in a few areas. We supported national not-for-profits that work in this area, and I'll give you a sense of that in a minute. We got to know StriveTogether, got us sort of lit up on the notion of community-based partnerships. I come from the technical world. Connie hears a lot about not-for-profits, about data. She says, look, tech dude, we got to get on top of this, and it's your job to figure that out. More on that later. I am still unfulfilled in that quota, if you will. Government systems. Government systems improvements are right. I've heard a lot of stories. We heard some of them in Nancy's introduction. A lot of stories of Strive communities doing great work to help leverage government institutions and government money in new ways. And last but not least, we said if we're going to do this kind of thing, we've got to be really, really, really sort of close to the ground, if you will, in a few places. We picked the places with which we have connection. Seattle, where we live, Los Angeles, where our basketball team is, and Detroit, where I grew up. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we were talking about the South and issues of poverty and opportunity in the South. I have to say we have no connections with any place in the South, but I do think the issues are somewhat different than we'll see in any of the other 3 communities in which we're focused. We're not looking to adopt a city at this stage, but to be analyzed in the future, if you will. I want to tell you a little bit about the backstory about how we got here. Now, I'm going to tell you a lot of things you know, and I'm sorry about that because I am the rookie, but maybe by underscoring some of the things that you know intrinsically, but telling you how a relative newbie, because I'm a relative newbie to the kind of work you do, it might help drive home just a few points that you know very, very well, but I'm still going to have a chance to talk about. Before I get there, This is just a list of some of the kinds of not-for-profits that we support: City Year, youth villages, communities in school, I Mentor, Vera. These are just a list of some of the biggest not-for-profits that we support. By the way, there's some stuff on this slide that are not meant for detailed reading. They're meant for impression. That's an impression of a lot. But if people are interested in the specifics, the StriveTogether folks will have the slides, et cetera, if there's anything that you're actually interested in digging into. We'll leave these behind. So let me talk a little bit about some of the backstory. I told you I was interested in government. I also, simultaneously to getting involved in our philanthropy, set up another kind of philanthropic enterprise that we call USA Facts. Our website, usafacts.org, is online. Check it out. I think you'll find a lot of interesting things. But what I decided to do, because when we looked at this question of how much government money is really going into supporting the kinds of kids that we talk about in this room, it was next to impossible. So I made it a project of mine to collect up government data, only government data, so it's not questionable, what is it called, fake news, alternate facts. This is the government data. Everyone in this room understands you use data to make decisions. I thought, gosh, some of these politicians ought to think about that sometime. So let's try to assemble the data in one place. And we did that. We have a lot more to do. We have a lot more to do at the state and local level. But we took spending, federal, state, and local, and we added it all together. Because if you want to see the impact on a child, you don't want to see just what the federal government puts in, or just what a state government, or just what a school district. You need to pull that together to see the full impact. But when you really want to take a look at how our government is performing, it's not just a question of where tax revenue comes from. It's not just a question of where the money's spent. It is a question, as people in this room know, of outcomes. Outcomes. How well are we doing in our crime situation? How well are we doing in our homelessness situation? How well are we doing academically? How well are we doing providing for the defense? Not going to war, providing for the defense of this country is stipulated in our Constitution. Well, one of the sections we put in terms of what government needs to do is the American dream. And the American dream section is where we talk about the notions of civil rights and what the government does, the notion of economic mobility and what the government does. It's interesting, when you get to economic mobility, you can think hard, and there's really three different concepts. People talk about equality, and I'm sure that's a noble and good goal for some people. It's not, and I'll explain why, it's not the focus we bring. It says everybody should be the same, as opposed to everybody should have the same opportunity. Slightly different. And I'm not saying there's bad work in any of these other areas, but sometimes when people talk about economic issues, it's about equality. Sometimes when people talk about these issues, they mean standard of living. Everybody should have a decent standard of living, which I believe in. I also believe only government can solve that problem. If there's more money needed to feed more people, it's beyond the support levels you'd get out of any philanthropic enterprise. It's got to come from the government, standard of living. The third thing you could mean is opportunity. Does everybody have an opportunity to do well, to achieve their dreams, to move up economically? And that, to me, really resonates. Now, these things are not incompatible, but we chose to focus in on this opportunity of mobility. So when we were doing this government data, I said, I'm going to get all the government data that relates to mobility, not just standard of living and equality, but also mobility. And it is hard to get. There's not a lot of data. But we found some, and we found some Federal Reserve analysis of the data that exists, and we published it. I'm going to show you just an excerpt. What I'm talking about on this slide is the probability that a kid born, and I'm going to walk through some scenarios, the kid born economically to parents of a certain means, what is the probability of them winding up in the, let's call it the bottom 20%, the next 20, the next 20, the next 20. So if you were born today in America, so perfect, by the way, is that black line. If you have 20% chance of being anywhere, that's pretty good. That would say this is an absolute country of equal opportunity for all economically. So you take a look at this and say, if your parents are in the bottom 20%, what do your probabilities look like? Well, it's 35% that you stay in the bottom 20%, and you could see how it scales down to what? Something like 6 or 7 or 8% probability that you wind up in the top income quintile. This clearly doesn't look great. Not great opportunity for kids born in the bottom quintile. Now, there's not a lot of data on a lot of issues that deal with race and ethnicity, but on this topic, the government provides some data, which it does not do generally. And it talks about the difference between blacks and whites. Blacks here means African Americans. It means Hispanic Americans who are black. It means refugees, so it's a mix. And that's why I'll use the word black as opposed to African American, because that's what the government publishes. If you were born black and in the bottom 20% tile by income, these are your chances. 50% chance that you will stay there, much worse than the average. And you can see at almost any point worse. Between the bottom quintile and the second quintile, that's a 70% chance. You only have a 30% chance of being in the top 60%. Somebody would say this is not a good sign of economic mobility. Not good at all. If you look at people who are born in the second quintile and you say, how do they do? Well, the blue line shows you all people. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but I'm going to tell you that's not very bad, actually. Now, it's easy for me to say I'm affluent. I did not grow up in the bottom 20%. I grew up, kind of middle class, if you will. But if perfect is all black on this, the black line, that's not bad. Again, if you're black in this country, the situation looks much worse. If you were born in the second 20 percentile, the most likely thing is that your kids, that you wind up, if you're born in the second 20%, the most likely case is you wind up in the bottom 20%. That can't be okay. That cannot be okay. And by the facts, by the numbers, you can look at equality numbers, you can look at standard of living numbers, they're important. But for me, for Connie, for our family, the notion that there are, and it's not just blacks, there are subsegments of the population for whom these numbers are a lot worse than the average. I look at the average and say, not great. I look at the average from the second quintile and I say, not terrible at all. I look at these numbers for the subsegment called black. You might find the same thing in rural. You might find the same thing amongst refugees from Southeast Asia, from Africa, the African American population, the Latino population, the Native American population. It may be Appalachia, where you find it for white people who've been displaced. But whatever the case is, the average isn't good, and there are pockets of people for whom it is really bad. This reinforced the overall story and proposition that Connie and I started with. This is not okay. Every kid in America deserves a chance, and that's not the case today. Number 2 in the backstory. This one, for me, was very interesting. Adverse childhood experiences. 2 years ago, I didn't know what that meant, and I suspect most of you do know, but when I told my nephew, whose father is a school super, that we were interested in the plight of kids who grow up in poverty, he said, so's my dad, the school superintendent. And he's been learning about this really interesting stuff called adverse childhood experiences. And he sent me a bunch of papers to read about what that meant. Essentially, there's a lot of research that says if you grow up with one or more of these 9 factors in your life, as you get more and more of them, it almost grows exponentially the probability that you wind up somehow with addiction issues, behavior issues, and the like. Physical, emotional, sexual abuse, emotional or physical neglect, divorce in the family, domestic violence in the family, family member incarcerated. You know, there's a list of about 9 or 10 of these. And literally, if you have 5 or 6 of these, the probability that you will have addiction or behavior issues is quite strong. Now, those are functions in large measure of your parents. Now, kid doesn't control his parents. It might not even be something his parents intend. They're in a position where it's hard for them to be functional. They got to work 3 jobs. They're not there to do some of the things that are necessary. And of course, when you grow up in poverty, where there are physical safety issues in your neighborhood, there's housing and homelessness, of course the parents are not going to be as able to be functional in terms of these adverse childhood experiences as you might think. This really got us thinking about what I might call whole child health. Whole child health. And, you know, a lot of the people I know from the tech world who've gotten involved philanthropically, they're focused on education, which is a great thing. But it often comes down to pedagogy, flexibility in work rules for teachers. It comes down to class size. And I'm not saying any of those things aren't important, but our teachers can be as good as they can be. And if our kids are not in a position where they don't have the kind of toxic stress that adverse childhood experiences bring on, if they're growing up not having a place to sleep every night, I'm not sure, as good as teachers and pedagogy might be, those kids are going to wind up with a chance at a real education. To me, education, by the way, and I think talking to a number of people in Strive communities, this will resonate. Education is actually 2 things. Education, as it's talked about in most of the world, it's the propellant. If we could only get kids in education, they have opportunity. That's kind of the classic thinking right now about ed reform. But I also think of education as a marker of how functional kids are getting in terms of dealing with life. Whether you can read at 3rd grade level, it's partly the level of function or dysfunction in your family life. You can have a loving parent and still have dysfunction because of the situation in which people are. And so for me, education is important in both sense. And when you talk about the 7, soon to be 7 goals for Strive Together communities, it reminds me that it's not just a question of getting the reading and pedagogy right. It's a question of helping these kids with the kinds of tough situations in which they grow up and helping their parents help them better, help whatever it takes to help kids be more functional. And our ability to measure that comes through the education system. Connie and I took a tour through Watts probably a year or 2 ago. And we were at the school, and the school had these nice rolling kind of mounds. If any of you ever watched Teletubbies on TV with your kids, they looked like these Teletubby mounds, nice green rolling mounds. And I said to the lady, "Oh, that's nice. The school's got these nice rolling mounds." She says, "No, that's not nice at all." I said, "Why is that nice at all?" She says, "Those mounds are there so if there's gunshots and gunfire, the kids can get down underneath the hills and avoid getting hit by the gunshot." How can you possibly function at school when that's kind of your world? It's just a tough situation. And dealing with the kinds of toxic stress that kids will come up with, whether that's sort of the meth problem that is sweeping our rural areas, some of the addiction and alcoholism that we find prevalent, unfortunately, on the reservations, the problems we see in the cities, if you will. These are the issues. So that was my second lesson. It's not about education by itself. It's about what does it take to help parents help their kids become functional kids? What does the parent need? Now, I'm not expert on that. In fact, we were sitting with a group last night who reminds us there's probably more we can do. I say we, I hope that's okay. There's more that we can do to really understand the voice of the parents, what the parents think they need. That may be a way to improve in every Strive community. In a business world, I'd call that market research. You got to let the parents speak because the parents do care. I mean, heck, there are plenty of people who wind up functional in life, but whose parents and environment had lots of adverse childhood experiences, but they become driven by it. Some kids shut down or act out. We just got to help those kids move forward. I'm running way over time, but I'm having fun. The next part of the backstory was our meeting in Cincinnati about a year ago with the StriveTogether folks. We'd heard a little bit about this community-based partnership. We wanted to go out, place-based. I hate the words, by the way, in this business. That you find about 10 different words to say exactly about 20% different things. So nobody ever knows what anybody means. And I'll tell you, that's true of the StriveTogether materials, too. It's an area of improvement possibility, as we would say at a sales meeting. And if you ever want anybody to listen to you, you got to get your narrative straight. We got to get these words right. And I think there may be a leadership role here. Anyway, for Strive, place-based. That was kind of what let's go learn about place-based. People are talking about place-based. Connie had read the Collective Impact article. I'm pleased to say I never read it. It sounds like a lot of you are there, but collective impact's another word, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it means. Because everybody will tell you they got these collective impact things, but they get confused with these place-based things, but they can be in a vertical like housing, blah, 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 blah. But what got us fired up about StriveTogether was the notion of taking a 360-degree view of the kid. The role of the parents, the role of the church, the role of the school, the role of the community college, the employment bureau, the role of the housing authority and other government agencies that get involved, the role of preschool. It was a 360, the role of not-for-profits, 3 mental health providers, behavioral health providers. It's a 360-degree view. Yes, and it's collective, because in order to get all those people involved, to get a 360-degree view, it's got to be collective. But then the other part of the genius is it works sort of like a business. You have goals. Goals, where did that come from? Great idea. And the goals actually are there to help track. If you use education goals, like I said earlier, you're tracking how functional you're helping the kids become, not just what they're learning. Everybody's got a role to play. If the kid cannot be in an environment where they get their homework done, you know there's something wrong. That lets you get at these contributing indicators that you talked about. You know, if a product's not selling well, revenue's bad, and you look and see whether the product's bad, the sales force is bad, it's like a business approach. It's methodological, it's serious, it's purposeful. It's 360 degrees because you have to look at it 360 degrees. All of that made sense. I had looked around as a newbie to this world and thinking that there was a lightning bolt. You just throw it, boom, you know, just this intervention or that government program, and poof, everything gets better in the lives of these kids. Yeah, come on, that's how tech guys think. You go into the lab, you cook something up, and it solves, saves the world. That is kind of the way and that's not a bad way to think. It just doesn't work in this area. There's no lightning bolt that can be thrown. It's a grind. If you want to do this 360-degree stuff, it is a grind. It's a grind. You have to have not only the goals, you have to have the right approach and the right tools in order to accomplish your goal. What would that mean in a business? What meetings do we have to have where we bring the right people together? Boom, go focus in on the problem. What technology do we need? IT tools, what you guys might call data. I learned that's what, what I think of as tech is called data in this world. And I don't like the term. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But you need to have the right tools, the right goals, the right ways of focusing in on things and identifying. When does, quote, product development get the problem? I.e., when do you need to draw in, take it the not-for-profit that focuses in on additional resources in the school? How does all this materialize? But you guys took a 360-degree view, you took a whole community view, and you took a professional view. That's what you do, and that's what, that meant something to me and Connie. I don't want to call that place-based. I don't want to call that collective impact. I'm going to call that a community-based partnership. And I'm going to use that word consistently. Or you'll tell me to use a different word consistently. I'm a open man. I just need to know what word to use. But for purposes of today, that's what I would call what you do. There are a few other organizations that do these in a few places, but nobody at your kind of size, scale, and level of development. That's my experience. I'd love to tell you if you had, quote, a competitor, unquote, we'd also be excited about them and fund them. We haven't found one. Not with the magic that I just described. And I think that's important. Like a business, though, you also need to have dedicated people that drive these management processes. You need dedicated people in the communities. You need a headquarters function, which is what StriveTogether does. How do we collect best practices? How do we make investments that can scale and solve the problems of all the communities? You need some infrastructure. This stuff doesn't come for free. But 360-degree view, professionalism. In a sense, I could say to you, as you think about new tools, new techniques, throwing lightning bolts, extra money, at the end of the day, you guys figured it out, but you've taught me, it's the community, stupid. Of course it is. Only the community can solve the community's problems. But bringing the approaches that you guys bring is important. Making the community be able to work together, or at least facilitating that, it is important. And yeah, there may be some more money that can be used and blah, 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 but at the end of the day, the community's got to decide to own this problem and have tools. Now, the thing I feel sad about is you don't have the advantages I had when I was in a business. People actually worked for me. I could actually, give an order. I don't think you can do that to your community partners. Not sure, but that's my understanding. It's not like you could say, superintendent, this is what you have to do. Ha, 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 ha. Turns out you could do that in a business. Anyway, so a bit of a difficulty, and I am inspired by your diligence and hard work on that problem, and you have all my peppiness and cheer behind you, because I'm sure it's a lot harder than anything I ever tackled in my business career. Next part of the, if you will, the backstory for us is really this notion of being data-driven. That was part of the professionalism that made sense. When I started work with Connie on this stuff, I think I mentioned technology is an important part. The problem with the way the word data and technology is used in the social services sector, everybody likes to act like technology is a lightning bolt. You throw one technology bolt and it solves all problems. Well, that doesn't work any more than throwing one lightning bolt does to solve the issues of social services. Each one of the things you want to do requires some technology to assist in the process. If you're a not-for-profit that serves kids with after-school programs, guess what? You actually need a few systems. You're going to have a fundraising system. You're going to have a system to track the kids and what they're doing and know more about them. You're going to have an accounting system. They're all different pieces. You're going to have a system to track the outcomes on those kids, what's happening, so that you can report back on the contracts that you have in place. You need to have a billing system. Just about every not-for-profit I meet seems to need to bill Medicaid or some other government program. You need billing systems that are unfortunately all too complex. But what I have seen and learned as I've visited a number of Strive communities is there's two core systems to running a Strive community well. And I'll speak as a technologist who's visited, 8, 9, 10 communities at this stage, and so I can see the pattern. Number one, you need a common tool. It's not going to replace the tools that other people use. You're not going to replace the registrar system at the school. You're not going to replace the case management system in the welfare office. You're not going to replace the case management system in each not-for-profit. You're not going to replace the electronic medical record system in the public health system. But you do need a system that helps all the practitioners coordinate to some degree, in some degree that might be even imperfect, but to some degree so that practitioners in the community as a collective can help kids. Now, you're not going to touch every kid in the population, but for the kids you can touch. And the more information you can get in there, the better. But guess what? You're not going to get it all in there. I'll tell you as a technologist, that isn't going to happen. I know people have really sort of fought and worked on these privacy agreements to get more and more information together. There's no magic bullet. You're just going to have to do a lot of hard work. We can do better. There can be a better technology infrastructure to make that easier, but it's not going to get solved kind of with one lightning bolt. The other system which you need is a system that's not about individual kids. People want to say everything's about the kids, and it sort of is, but you need to track the population of kids. Things like crime rate, things like graduation rate. You can say it gets down to individual kids, but you're not tracking them all. And yet they're important parts of population health. If the most crime-ridden blocks in Watts are around schools, guess what? That's got to be worked on. We've supported something in LA, community policing initiatives, which can help a lot to help just making it safer for kids to go to school. So you need two systems, and most of you that I visited have two systems. One that's about the kids and one that's about population health. And when I say population health, that includes graduation rate, it includes a number of things that you report on to your investors in your communities. And we need both of those. We need both of those tools to get better and better. We need to augment those tools. Wouldn't it be nice to have a tool as you think from community to neighborhood, not only what are the neighborhoods, but what are the blocks that need the most focus? We saw this really cool technology that she's actually a pediatric anesthesiologist, a lady we met from Fort Worth. She got tired of seeing so many kids come in physically abused. And she worked on a piece of technology that can take a bunch of publicly available inputs and actually show you down to a few square blocks where you can expect the highest incidence of ACEs and where you can expect the most kids to come in with issues. It works super well. Imagine having a tool like that. It's a community health predictive tool, not just a reporting tool. But these two pillars are the pillars of the kind of tools you need. I saw them in Utah. We've seen some of the predictive stuff in Akron as we visited Strive communities. And I think you're well on your way on the stuff on the right. More to do on the left. That's even further away, I think. A lot of you seem to use, the thing from Social Solutions. ETO. A bunch of you seem to use something from a small company, I never remember their name, in downstate Illinois that's a manufacturing company but somehow has a social service solution for case management. Somebody might remember the name. I've seen that in a number of places. Getting these tools stronger, firmer, better is an important part of the path forward. Government. This is a list. And they're popping up one by one, by one, by one, by one, by one, of all of the major programs and some of the minor programs. that we have discovered in our USA Facts work that are designed to help kids and families in poverty. Some of them are about opportunity, some of them are about standard of living. I guess we didn't wind up putting the total in the middle. It adds to about 1.3 trillion in that pie. 1.3 trillion. And yet most of it is Medicaid or income supports like the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Child Tax Credit. We didn't include all of the Earned Income Tax Credit. We only include the things that come back in the form of cash, which is the stuff that is unique to poor people. Child Tax Credit applies to the middle class, but middle class just has their taxes reduced. If you're below a certain income level, you're actually getting cash back from the government. We include some of the Social Security disability programs, which disproportionately affect less affluent people. But if you wanted my worldview, those are the key streams that we can attach to as a group to find additional money or to better steer money to achieve action. Now, I wrote down 3 other systems which are not unique, frankly, to lower income people, but are also important. There's the K through 12 education system. That's another $600 billion. There's the criminal justice system. That's another $260 billion. And we all know the criminal justice system is important in the lives of many of the kids that get served through the communities in this area. And the government, it's not as easily characterized, but through the FHA, the government actually underwrites loans to less affluent people. And something like 44% of the people in the bottom 20% by income actually own the home. And it's important to think about that as we talk about homelessness and housing instability and the like. This is actually a lot of money. I will tell you, though, it is complex. All these little programs, blah, 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 that our communities are worried about. It is distributed money and authority, federal government, state government, local governments. How many local governments are there in the United States? 90,000. That includes cities, counties, school districts, transit authorities. There's a lot of places this money can go get weirdly distributed. These governments are poorly aligned. And guess who has the best ability to pull it together? The local community. It's not going to happen at the federal government level. It might happen in some states at the state level. In California, I could tell you, county level is probably the first place where you really get any level of integration of any of these things. As we've been out, we've heard about some really interesting things that Strive communities have done to pull down government money. You heard about Cincinnati and Dayton in preschool. You heard about some of the things the Commit Partnership has done to revector money from the Dallas School District. Connie and I were up in Minnesota. A group of the StriveTogether communities have come together and actually got the legislature to appropriate money to support the actual StriveTogether infrastructure. In Albany, there's been work to try to get Medicaid money for pediatricians to be able to help support driving literacy amongst younger kids. So this government money must be steered, it must be aligned, it will be difficult. I think one of the benefits perhaps that can come from the center of StriveTogether is to help give some clarification so that the community, the nonprofits, and others in the community can actually better understand where all this government junk is. Everybody always says government has to fund things, even the not-for-profits, but you got to understand them, where's the money and what's it being used for. In the last year, I've had a chance mostly with Connie, and sometimes her and me independently, we've had a chance to meet with people in a number of different Strive communities. Seattle, Tacoma, Salt Lake City, Minneapolis, St. Paul, surrounding Minnesota areas, Dallas, Memphis, Dayton, Cincinnati, you can see Milwaukee, we met Danae. We've had a chance to hear about a lot of the great work that you're doing and obviously been impressed. On the other hand, We also are in love with a few things that you're doing in your strategic plan. Technology. I'll just tell you, you need to do more. You've got to do more, and I'll say you got to do more at the center. Part of the problem with doing everything community by community, you never get any scale. You don't have a chance to be as deep and professionalized. You don't have the leverage over social solutions on ETO that many of you might want. This technology stuff can and should get better. Influencing government. I just had a chance to talk a little bit, but what I understand is many of the Strive communities have no kind of advocacy capability, the ability to really work the legislature, and you can see the benefits from some of the communities that have. Talent. When I, as a newbie to social services, boy, do I find a lot of passionate, inspired people. I think we can find more people. We can take better advantage, like Teach for America has, of really young people with a lot of enthusiasm. But the talent will need professional development. It will need career paths. When people come in and do data and then they go to work for, I don't know, Microsoft, that probably is not good net for the social services sector. But it's good that those people came in at all and got educated. But we need career paths so that people can say, I've achieved something. I don't want to do the same job I've been doing for 15 years. What are my options? How can I see new things and feel like I'm growing? And I think that's important. And I think there's a unique opportunity for StriveTogether to play that role, not only for the community, but getting in general the social services sector to invest more in talent. Fourth thing that's in your plan, strategic plan, but frankly, I'm just going to be like direct as direct can be. The narrative out of the social services sector in general and StriveTogether specifically about what to do about these issues, about what the situation is and what the opportunity is and what a community-based partnership is, for example, is atrocious. It is some of the worst, and I'm not trying to beat up Jeff or Jennifer or Colin or anybody in any community. Oh, it's hard to understand. You know, sustaining partnership, I mean, you know, I'm thinking, why don't they just call it platinum, gold, silver, and bronze? Everybody else on the planet does. And I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just trying to say simplifying the communication for StriveTogether and for the whole social services sector. Please, please, you know, just take a smart, somewhat interested person and make it easier to understand. I'm willing to put in some time, but just a little more. The second thing I'll say very specifically on this, the StriveTogether brand has to get stronger. I know each of the communities needs a local presence. Seeding Success, the Commit Partnership, Graduate Tacoma. Those things are important, but if the whole here is not bigger than the sum of the parts, there's no way to have a narrative. There's no way when you go see a legislator to say, this is part of a bigger movement. This is a real methodology. This is a professional group. And it makes everybody have to work harder in their individual activities. I come from the tech world. I'll give you just the simplest of suggestions, and it's probably not good. But you know how Intel always puts at the end of every PC ad, powered by Intel? Or you get the little, that's their sound in every, sorry, I don't sing very well. But, you know, Windows is an ingredient to a PC, and everybody knows it. An Intel microprocessor is a part of every PC, and everybody knows it. StriveTogether is part of each of your partnerships, and it would be helpful for the world to know it. I'll tell you, I could actually talk about this organization if that was true. I can't. Even this Cradle to Career, it is what it is, but it's not a brand. Ooh, this is a Cradle to Career network. Well, there's 68,000 organizations that claim they're a Cradle to Career network. StriveTogether is something bigger than that. You need to be able to explain it as something bigger. You've got to have a name for it. The name's got to come out in addition to your local presence. I used to face the same thing at Microsoft. The guys at Microsoft France would say, this is not good for the French people. You know, we need to have more local presence. To which we would say, you need some local and you need some global. And I just think you would benefit and you would make it easier for guys like me who want to tout the great work. You know, I have to say, Strive Together. Oh, by the way, it's called Seeding Success in Memphis. They say, well, why doesn't it? Is it really part of Strive Together? You'll figure it out. Please, you'll figure it out. There's two other things I want to suggest adding to your list. Now, right now I'm way out over my skis. I've only visited 10 communities, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to give you two other thoughts from an outsider. Number one, you need not only an employment measure, you also need some measure, and it might be different by community, that says you're not just an education reform movement. Since all the goals to date have been education related, it doesn't communicate what I think you're working on for whole child health. Look, in some places, kids are too sick to go to school because of asthma-related issues. If that's the right one for you, pick it. You could say it's a contributing indicator, and I'd say, yes, it is a contributing indicator. But if you want to position the organization as something more than an ed reform movement, you got to signal that through the goals that the community adopts. In some, it'll be safety, crime rate, safety. In some places, it may have to do with housing. But I think if you don't want to position, and I don't think Strive should. I think you should position yourself as a 360-degree player. But if you really want that to happen, as opposed to having other collective impact things spring up and housing and this and that, you want one community focus on this thing, you have to figure out how in the goal set to use that as a signaling mechanism that this organization is about whole child health. The other thing that I want to talk about is equity. Equity is super important, but equity needs to be made concrete. It needs to be made concrete. It is a principle. People should embrace the principle of equity. I completely agree with that. But you need to then take the principle of equity and make it actionable for people. You know, I was really impressed by something the folks in Dayton talked about. They said, hey, look, let us give you an example of a real equity issue. We have found that there are too few qualified preschools in African American neighborhoods. That's a concrete equity issue. It's not just a principle. It's something to go work on concretely. And I think we need to work on both levels, the principled level and the concrete applied level. And those issues will vary. They'll be different if you have a large Hispanic population. There may be issues of making sure you have the right language skills in some of the places in the community or something else I can't anticipate. I'm not Hispanic. I don't know what the issues are. There may be issues in a refugee community, particularly with Muslim refugees, whatever it may be. It's easy for me to speculate, but you got to say, here's what it is. In some cases, the actual interventions will need to be different. In most cases, I don't think the actual interventions will be different, but the way you deliver them, the way you think about them, how you think about targeting them by neighborhood, where there's density of people who are underserved, I think those things are important. And taking this equity issue and having it exist as a principle, but also a set of specifics, it makes it easier for everybody to participate in, whether you are a member of an underserved community, a community that has been pushed out of the stream of opportunity or not. I hope that makes sense. We're now dealing in my now professional life. There's been a lot of focus on equity issues in terms of athletes, the NFL, the NBA. That's essentially a focus on equity issues. And I think it's a great thing that athletes are using their bully pulpit to speak out on the issue. The thing that I think is getting lost, though, is what are the specifics? And I'm not saying athletes should get up there and say what the specifics are. but it'd be nice to have some specifics. Right now, unfortunately, I think a lot of it's turned into a Trump's a bad guy thing. And you're all entitled to your own opinions. I can bet what this crowd would by and large say on that, but I'm not doing politics right now. But while I salute athletes, and I'll support what our athletes choose to do to make a statement, however big or small, that'll be up to our team to decide. That's the principle. It's up to folks like us to also bring the specifics alive. With that, I want to wrap up on this notion of the American dream. I met a guy, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. He's a professor at Harvard, one of the fastest tenure track guys ever at Harvard University. He grew up in a family, no mother. They're cooking crack cocaine in the kitchen at his aunt's house where he lived. Tough situation. Fastest tenure track, I think, history of the Harvard Economics Department. And we got in a conversation, and we essentially said, what is it that is different for kids who do have mobility versus kids who don't? We're actually now working on we're funding a research study that they're doing to try to get at some of those topics. We all need to learn more. We all need to do more. You guys are at the front line. You can bring kids across the goal line. You can get your communities rallied up to do that in a way nobody else can. I'm inspired by you. I salute you, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
You know what? Just stay here. Stay here. You don't need to sit down. So, I'll tell you what, you gave us a full message. You were candid. You gave us advice we have needed and we will use. I am curious about one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
You and Connie have done more in-depth study. Imagine visiting 10 of our sites already just in the past year, visiting the Cincinnati mothership, if you will, talking to us about the relationship between the central office and the partnerships. You are very quick studies. So the question, I think, is on all of our minds, given what you know about us, given where you think we can go, what are you thinking about next steps for the Ballmer Group and StriveTogether?
I'm not sure. I don't think she actually asked for the order, but she might have. Are you actually asking how we might support StriveTogether?
I think that's what I had in mind.
I'd say a direct ask works pretty good. That's what I learned in business. You don't ask, you don't get. Social services people don't quite ask the way a Microsoft salesperson would, but we will. There is an order. So let me tell you what we will do. We have committed to provide up to $10 million a year for the communities. So there'll be a fund that we're providing of up to $10 million a year. The communities apply. The StriveTogether team will work through those. And I think you have to be at least at the sustaining level in order to be eligible to get some money, a little incentive to get to the incentive-based systems kind of work well, at least at a sales meeting, get up there to sustaining level. And we have a pool of $10 million a year that will be accessible to the teams in this room. That's number one. Number two.
Again.
Number two, we believe in the strategic plan. It requires a bunch more money to go in also at the parent. We've agreed we fund 100% of what's necessary at the parent. This year, we're going to ramp that down to 50% of what's needed in year 6 so that other people can come in and also show their enthusiasm about Strive community-based partnerships. But that'll add up to over $30 million. So it's a total commitment of up to 90-odd million from us for your work over the next 6 years.
Wow. Now that is incredible. You know, sometimes you say it brought the house down, it brought the house to their feet. And Steve and Connie, Steve speaks so highly of what you've brought to his thinking. You're a fantastic couple, and we are proud to have you on the team. I do want to say that of that 30 million, 80% of that money is really packaged into the support StriveTogether Central does for the community-based partnership. So really, if you look at the whole equation, the community-based partnerships are getting the investment that you've worked so hard for, and I know you will show that you deserve, and this is really a remarkable thing. Now,
And if the headquarters does not serve you well,
whoa, tell Steve and Connie.
what's your email address? Yes.
Yes.
Steve B at ballmergroup.com. Shoot me a note. I'll be after him.
So that kind of diligence and watchful eye is exactly what we're looking for, and this is in every respect a partnership. I'm going to work on the ask, but I want to tell you, yesterday when we were having the roll-alike groups, and we had investors, people who've invested, entities that, philanthropies that have invested in us and may invest in us, Steve made the ask. And I'm telling you, there was no one in the room who left confused about how they're going to add to this investment. So I'm learning. Now, Steve and Connie, if you observed last night, they were right there, right in the front row. They don't like to leave or go. They've seen too many people fly by a conference and head out and say, you figure it out. This guy has a teaching responsibility. He has to go teach a class. And that's why Steve and Connie have to shoot out of here so that they can get to do what we think matters most, which is, you know, education, teaching. So I wanted to explain that because I think you've observed how available, accessible they are. You've come up, many of you have introduced yourselves, and of course you remember who you met and what you saw and what you did, so it's all really, really incredible. As Steve and I leave the stage and turn it over to Jennifer Blatz, who always gives us the next kind of what we're supposed to do, I just one more time want us all to just show our appreciation.
Can I ask the
Ballmer
group for one more thing before you do?
You absolutely may. Yes, sir.
We have these bright young kids in my class. It's a public policy and government class, government by the numbers, kind of the stuff we talked about. I'll see whether any of them, do you guys take summer interns? Would anybody want a summer intern?
Yeah.
I'll go splunking around to see whether we can find somebody who might want to intern in a StriveTogether community this summer. Maybe we'll find somebody.
Wow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Fantastic.
I don't even know how to follow that. So I mean, I'm here to give logistics, but I just have to say this is really emotional. It's a game-changing opportunity for this network that more than 10 years ago when we started this work in Cincinnati, I could never imagine this moment. And I'm so thankful to all of you and to Jeff and to Steve and Connie for believing in this work. This is a validation for all of the hard work that you put in every single day. The emails, the meetings at late nights, the community sessions. I know how hard you all work. I've done this work on the ground. It was the hardest thing. It's so much easier to do the national work. It's really freaking hard on to do this work on the ground, and thank you. This is incredible. There's a lot more for you to hear about at lunch, and you'll hear more about the plan, and you'll hear it from the network members who built this plan. This is the network's plan for the network, and it's going to take us so far in this work and just to make this incredible change across the country. And so thank you for all that you do every day. And so with that, and I have to thank one more person, is Nancy Zimfer, to have this incredible board chair and advocate. She was there on the bridge. This is her brainchild, back in 2006 when we launched that partnership, and to have her through this incredible transition to take on the role that she's taken and to be here every step of the way, it's just been amazing. So thank you, Nancy. So now you get to go to workshops. You have 30 minutes to catch your breath and talk amongst yourselves. But at 10:30, our workshops begin. It's a chance to learn from one another. They're fantastic workshops. We had more proposals, more great ideas than ever before, and they just keep getting better. So get to those workshops and learn from your peers. At lunch, as I mentioned, you'll hear about the strategic plan. It will be a great opportunity to dig deep into what the details are, and there's so much more work to be done there. And then after lunch, we're going to do one of those group photos again. You remember that from last year? We're going to cram 400 people into a photo. It's going to be amazing. So be there for that. And we will have more amazing workshops, back to a reception at the atrium today. That's here at the Hyatt. And we're just asking you to engage throughout this convening. There's a banner at the back. We'd love for you to sign that banner. Be active on social media. I saw a lot of tweeting happening. It's #BeTheChangeC2C. We want to see your pictures, hear your thoughts, get what you're learning out there into the social media world. And then look for Colleen Molesky. She's one of our team members. Colleen is going to be interviewing all of you who are interested. And it's how you get free drink tickets. Everybody wants free drink tickets. So Colleen will give you a free drink ticket if you do an interview. So now you're the most popular person in the room. And Colleen is one of our many team members who are just amazing. So the StriveTogether team, can you please stand up? Stand up. We've had a heck of a year, and this team has pulled it off and stood by, and they're here to help you get through this convening, help you make the most of it. They're amazing. Look for them, meet with them, and with that, I think I hit all of the logistics, and we are ready to go to transition. Thanks.